What's up, Internet? Thank you for watching this video. I appreciate it. I want to say right at the top that this is not the only way to practice guitar. There are a lot of ways to practice guitar. There are a lot of ways I practice guitar, but this is one way that I found that's fairly efficient and I think fairly effective, so I think it's worth sharing. If you get use out of this, cool. If not, that's all right too. So I came up with this method when I was trying to deal with issues that I was having as a musician and in talking to other guitar players. And what I came to find is that what I originally thought were technical issues or timing issues, when I really looked at it, were fretboard knowledge issues. So for example, if I said to play a G major chord, you could probably do it without much hesitation. But if I said to play an F sharp major 7 arpeggio, there may be a millisecond of hesitation before you played it. The problem is that millisecond of hesitation is too much when you're playing live or you're in the studio, because you've now taken your focus away from the pulse, from the dynamics of the band, from the melodic idea you're playing, to try to figure out exactly where the notes are, what that shape looks like on the guitar. So I try to find a way to really effectively and efficiently learn the fretboard in a way that I wouldn't have to think about that kind of stuff anymore. And that's how this method came about. So this video will be divided into 3 sections. The first section will be just an overview of what this is. The second section will be how to set up a logic session to practice using this method. And then the third section will be playing examples. So I hope you get some use out of this. I hope it's beneficial to you, and good luck.
So what is this anyway? You think you got something figured out?
All right, so what is this? At a very high level, it's taking several different practice strategies and mixing them together. So I've taken the idea of practicing with a drum loop and combined that with practicing with a drone. I've taken those 2 ideas and I've combined them with practicing horizontally along the neck as opposed to vertically. Lastly, I've taken the idea of restricting the number of strings and incorporating that into this method as well. So for example, I could take a drum loop and an F drum and practice the F major scale horizontally along the neck using only the D and the G string. I believe this works because it deals with a lot of issues that guitar players have in the way that they learn the fretboard. Specifically, often guitar players learn the fretboard through 3-note per string scales, pentatonic boxes, or other finger stuff. Because all of those disappear when you learn a scale horizontally along the neck, you actually end up seeing the scale in more of its pure intervallic form, similar to the way a piano player would see it. So what this ends up doing for a guitar player is it gets us into areas of the fretboard that we may not be used to, seeing intervallic relationships in a way that we may not be used to, and also using fingerings that we may not be used to. It also deals with ear training, which is something that guitar players often don't do enough of. Because you're hearing every note against only one other note, in this case a static note of a drone, you can really truly hear what an interval sounds like, so you can hear what a major third sounds like, or a sharp 5 sounds like. Another benefit is it deals with time, because guitar players often are reluctant to practice with a metronome because it's boring. This takes that excuse away. So because it's a drum loop, it can often be more interesting and exciting to play with and practice with, but it's also more applicable to how human beings generally play music, which is with a drummer. A bonus is also that you could tailor the drum loop to be whatever style of music that you play. So for example, if you were a jazz musician, you could play to a swing beat. If you were a blues musician, you could practice to a shuffle beat. If you were interested in odd times, you could use an odd time drum beat. Anything that's applicable to how you play, you could incorporate into this method. As a bonus, another way I use the drone and drum loop method is I take one idea and I play that idea in multiple keys. So for example, I may take a line that works over F major 7 and move that same line up a minor third, for example, and it may work great over an A flat major chord or an F minor chord. Because all I'm hearing is an F note, I can actually play the line in different places and hear how it may be able to be applied to different harmonic situations. So we'll deal with that when we get into the examples. It sounds complicated when I say it, but it's actually pretty easy when you see it. So I think that this method has a lot of benefits and it's relatively easy. However, more than likely there's going to be a learning curve for some musicians that aren't used to seeing the neck in this way. I still struggle with certain keys and certain scales, and I've been doing this for several months. So, but I really do see the benefit in this, in how it's helping me when I play live. So hopefully it'll be helpful for other folks. So we're going to move into how to set up Logic to practice using this method, and kind of how I lay out my practice schedule for a week, and then we'll work on some examples. Here's an example of how I have Logic organized to facilitate this type of practice. So I want to say right at the top that I don't do this for hours a day. I do this for usually 30, 45 minutes a day, sometimes shorter, sometimes longer, depending on what I'm trying to accomplish. But because of what I'm trying to accomplish, which is really a deeper understanding of the fretboard, what I've realized is this is a long-term project. This isn't something that you're going to be able to do for a week or 2 weeks and really feel like you have it down. So I'm trying to be reasonable with myself and make sure that I do the work every day, but I don't go in with the expectation that if I practice 3 hours in a day, I'm going to have it. I just don't think it works like that. So in terms of organization, the way that I have organized this is I have drum beats at the top and then my drones below. So the way I have this set up for me is I have the drones organized by cycle. So how I organize my practice is I take 2 keys a day over 6 days, and that allows me to essentially cover all 12 keys in a week. So for example, on Monday, I'll come into the practice room and I know I'm going to be working with the keys of F and B flat. So I'll do the scale work, I'll do triad work, arpeggio work, lines that I want to try to incorporate into my playing in those keys. On Tuesday, I'll come in and do E flat and A flat, so on and so forth. And generally on the 7th day, which for me is Sunday, I usually have gigs that, in some cases, multiple gigs on those days during the day. So that interferes with practicing. So generally on Sunday, I'll be gone most of the day, and then I'll come home and usually work on whatever I want to work on. So that's sort of a free day. So what I figured out from experimenting with myself is that any more than 2 keys a day and my dumb brain can't handle it. Any less than that, and I feel like the timeline gets stretched out too far, and you start to lose the benefits of this type of work. So for me, 2 keys a day works great. If you can do more, that's great. If you need to do less, that's great too. Whatever works for you is going to be just fine. So again, the way I have this organized is at the top I have the 4 drum loops. In my case, they are MIDI drum loops that I downloaded from a website called Funklet. Funklet is a website that creates MIDI versions of old R&B and soul drum beats. That works for me because of the type of music that I play. It also works for me because they're generic enough that they don't get in the way, but they're also syncopated enough that they can be interesting. So because they're MIDI, they can be changed to any tempo. They can be shortened or lengthened. They can be used with any drum kit that you want to use. They can also be changed within the beat itself via MIDI. So these tempos that you see here are where they sound best and where they were originally recorded. Because they're MIDI, again, they can be changed to any tempo. So I'll give you an example. If I was wanting to come into the practice room and work on 16th note triplets, I'm probably not going to be able to play triplets at 145 beats per minute, 16th note triplets. However, I probably could at 78 beats per minute. So I may choose that drum beat, change the tempo to 78 beats per minute, and then practice that 16th note triplet, whatever I'm trying to work on, against that beat. If I want to push my technique, of course I can by changing the BPM, and again, these drum beats sound best at those tempos, so I have a decent range of BPM. For me, I probably am never going to play anything much faster than 145 beats per minute, so I could practice 16th notes at that tempo, for example, and that's probably all I'll need. So I'll give you an example of what these drum beats sound like. So you can hear I have a range of syncopated beats. Some of them are fairly busy, some of them are fairly sparse. And of course with Logic, I always have the option of just practicing with a metronome, which in my case is important because I do session work, so I do have to play to a click. And you probably heard when I had the drums going, I also had the click going because I'm finding that more and more of the live work that I do involves playing to tracks, which is going to have a click in it often, and obviously a live drummer as well. So it helps me simulate that in the practice room, so it's not as shocking to hear a click and a real drummer live. So below that, you will see the drones, again, organized, in my case, around the cycle. However you want to organize them is going to be just fine. So I selected a synth sound that sustains for a full bar. It is fairly obnoxious, but it works for what I'm trying to accomplish. So if there's a sound that is more appropriate for whatever you're trying to do, that's going to be just fine. The only thing I would say is to make sure that that sound sustains for as long as your loop is. Because again, a lot of the benefit of this comes from the ear training aspect. So you need that drone to last the full bar so you can hear your notes against it. So I'll give you an example of what the drone sounds like. So if I add the drum beat in, this gives me what a typical practice session would sound like. And if that drum beat was too much for me on that day, my nervous system just couldn't handle that much syncopation, I can always choose this one. So again, for me, I know when I come in the practice room on Monday, I'm going to be dealing with the keys of F and B flat, and so on and so forth throughout the week through Saturday. So it eliminates a lot of the guesswork in what I'm going to be working on. It lets me know when I come in the practice room exactly what to do when I get started. And I know I'm going to come in and get that stuff out of the way and then move on to stuff that I need to work on as well. So we'll move into the examples now.
Who are you anyway,
Just some dude who doesn't like sucking, man. If you don't like it, go away. It's free.
Okay, for this first example, I'm going to set a drum loop to 101 beats per minute and choose an F drone. Over this drone, I'm going to practice the F major scale using only the D and the G strings, starting from the lowest fretted note, working my way up to around the octave and then back down. One of the things I always try to do before I practice this way is to set some sort of harmonic backdrop. So you'll hear me play chords first so I can make sure that I have the sound of the harmony in my ears before I play the scale. Okay, so another thing you can do using the same drum loop and the same drone, the same scale and the same set of string restrictions, is to practice triads or arpeggios. So in this example, I will practice diatonic arpeggios in the key of F major using only the D and the G string horizontally along the neck. As always, I'll set the harmonic backdrop first and then play the arpeggios up around an octave and then back down. Okay, so now I'll show how to use that same drum loop, drone, scale, and set of string restrictions to practice different ways to challenge yourself with the major scale. So I'll do 2 notes per string, I'll do a reverse pattern where I lead with the pinky, I'll do different rhythmic ideas, and I'll also do where we break out of the horizontal to actually play scales in a position. So 2 notes per string first. So now I'll lead with the pinky. So now I'll do different rhythmic ideas. So now I'll do it horizontally, but I'll break out of the horizontal pattern to play in a position. Okay, so a way to get more mileage out of this approach is to take the same drum loop and the same drone, but instead of thinking of it as F major, think about F minor. So in the case of minor, you always have to consider, is the 6 natural or is it flat? In this case, I'm going to choose flat. So I'll essentially be coming out of the F Aeolian sound. If you want to think of that as coming from the parent key of A flat major, that's okay. However, we'll be playing an F drone and an F minor chord. So as always, I'll lay the harmonic background, which in this case will be some type of F minor chord, and then I'll play F Aeolian horizontally along the neck using the D and the G string, and then back down again. Okay, so now we'll use that same drum loop and same drone, but we'll apply a more complex harmonic backdrop. In this case, we'll do an F7 altered sound. So this type of sound. So we'll be using the F7 altered scale using the same set of string restrictions. Okay, in this next example, I'm going to show how you can use the same drum loop and the same drone, but practice multiple scales during one session. So in this example, I'm going to choose F major pentatonic and F minor pentatonic. And something really interesting happens when you change those scales. You can really hear the harmony change, even though I won't be playing any chords. So another example of how you could use this approach is to take a 5-1 movement. So F to C7 or C7 to F. And using the same restrictions, play those two chords back and forth, switching scales as you go horizontally along the neck. This is fairly challenging, and I think most people use pentatonic scales more than they do that kind of 5-1 movement, so I think this is probably more appropriate to show. But really listen to how the harmony sounds like it's changing, even though I won't be playing any chords. Okay, so in this last example, I'll show how you can use the drum loop and a drone to practice lines over different harmonic backdrops. So in this example, I'm going to play this line. Except I'll play it in different areas to where I can apply it to F major, to F minor, and also to F dominant. So you'll hear me lay the harmonic backdrop first, and then I'll play the line. So F major first. F minor. So F13. Okay, so because that last example had a fairly chromatic, jazz-oriented line, I'll show how this approach can also be used to practice blues vocabulary or rock vocabulary. So I'll take one line again and show how it can be used over 3 different harmonic backdrops using this method. So the line will be something like this. So I'll show how you can use it over F major, F minor, and also F13. So F major first. F minor. So F13.